Have you ever felt like there were 1,000 different thoughts going through your mind every single moment, running on empty as you're constantly overanalyzing and going back to every single social interaction you've had this day, slowly convincing yourself that people are talking behind your back? Do you sometimes feel completely out of it? Like, you don't belong on this planet, you're from somewhere else, and all these thoughts going on, all of your attention being constantly diverted everywhere else, making it hard to focus on any singular task. Maybe it turns into disruption, or you're winging everything in school, or maybe you're just quiet and people label you lazy, even though you know it's not true. You're not lazy, you're not spaced out, but every time you go to finish up your essay, you just have to know when the Pyramid of Giza was built, or you go down a rabbit hole looking into why wombats poop cubes. Now, I'm describing some of the symptoms and some of the ways that people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, may feel. It's estimated that about 10% of kids are going to have ADHD, but there's also a lot about ADHD that we still get wrong today. Hi, I'm Simon. I'm the co-founder of Resolvve Inc., a company that wants to improve mental health for students by providing access to low-cost therapy options and developing educational content to help you learn more about your mental health. We're off to myth number one, and it's that women and girls don't get ADHD as often as boys. Now, unfortunately, there's this belief that women and non-binary folks don't get ADHD, and there's a lot of reasons why this belief is so pertinent. Now, according to CDC data published in 2019, there are about twice as many boys that are diagnosed with ADHD than girls. But that doesn't really mean that girls don't get ADHD as often. In fact, there's more and more people coming out of the woodwork as adults, women discovering that they had ADHD all along and finding that it really explains a lot in terms of their life experiences. Now, one of the reasons that girls don't get diagnosed as often is the way the symptoms present themselves. Boys are going to externalize their symptoms, which usually translates to things that are easier to see. They're going to be impulsive, they might be disruptive in class, have trouble focusing, they might talk a lot, and they might have a lot of trouble sitting still. And girls, on the other hand, are going to internalize their symptoms. And this doesn't really look as obvious as it does with boys. So the symptoms include poor self-esteem, anxiety, daydreaming, and inattentiveness, trouble with organization, and difficulties in class. Now, the really pernicious thing here is that a lot of early research in ADHD focused on boys. Their symptoms ended up painting what we think of ADHD as a whole. This is an issue that we see throughout scientific and medical history, where women and other ethnicities were underrepresented in trials and research. And now we're just reckoning with the matter because girls do get ADHD and they do deserve to be diagnosed as well. Number two, ADHD only occurs in children. It's estimated that somewhere between 2.5% and 5% of adults worldwide have ADHD, but less than 20% have actually been diagnosed. This is a big problem. And as you can imagine, ADHD doesn't just disappear once you hit 18. Imagine that. Someone just sending you a card in the mail when you're 18 that says, "Congratulations, you don't have ADHD anymore." No, that doesn't happen. So there's a lot of issues with ADHD that do crop up when you get older, and it leads to problems at university and at work. Some of the issues, including organization, impulsiveness, and difficulty focusing, are treatable with a combination of drug and therapy-based treatments. And you've probably heard of someone who got diagnosed in adulthood, and it's usually a positive experience. There's even been studies that have looked at this phenomenon. Sometimes it explains something a person's been wondering their whole life about why they might be different, helps put their identity in focus, and it can help them achieve a better life. So if you're feeling like you have some symptoms, you're an adult, maybe it's worth going in for a checkup, seeing if you have ADHD and whether that can put things in focus for you. Now, myth number 3 jumps off of this point. And myth number 3 is that ADHD is overdiagnosed and overmedicated. And from everything that we've discussed so far, you should be able to say yourself that this is a myth. It's clearly wrong. I mean, who hasn't heard someone state that we're just medicating rowdy kids, or that ADHD is a result of poor parenting? Someone might point to the rates of ADHD going up. But that's not really evidence of whether something is overdiagnosed or not. ADHD is actually very carefully looked at and diagnosed by doctors and pediatricians. So the 2014 National Survey of the Diagnosis and Treatment of ADHD and Tourette Syndrome looked at a bunch of kids that were diagnosed, and they reported that doctors used best practices for diagnosis 90% of the time with the survey. So the underdiagnosis means that people go untreated even as they become adults. And it makes it harder to maintain relationships, and also makes it more difficult for you to keep your job. And this also flows into the other myth that actually keeps people away from taking medication that could actually help them. Myth number 4, ADHD medication is dangerous or addictive. No, Ritalin and other stimulants that are commonly prescribed for ADHD are not dangerous, and they are not addictive. You might be curious, where does this myth come from? Well, in the 60s and 70s, scientists found that certain stimulants that are used to treat ADHD led to addiction in rat and mouse models. So they were giving these animals a massive dose as they injected the drug directly into the animal, rather than giving them a dose that's more similar to what humans might be getting, but for a mouse, right? So just scaling it down. And of course, when we take our pills, they don't go directly into our bloodstream. They're processed through our gastrointestinal tract, where some of the microbes in our gut might process the drug. Our liver might process some of the drug or get rid of some of the drug. And that means that by the end of it, there's a lot less active drug in your bloodstream than what you've actually ingested. So obviously, the study was heavily criticized by scientists, but the myth was born because anyone that's trying to prove a conclusion that they held before the study was run are able to take this as evidence and run with it and say that ADHD medication is dangerous. So researchers at the University of California in San Diego decided to try and bust this myth once and for all in 2020. What they did is they fed mice some stimulants orally in a comparable dose, which means that the mice weren't getting way too much ADHD and that it scaled to what you might give a person. And they found no evidence of addiction. Another reason that we know for sure that these drugs aren't addictive is that the vast majority of doctors who prescribe them don't observe addiction in their patients who take the therapeutic dose of this medicine. But wait, why are drugs called stimulants used to treat kids and adults who are, well, overstimulated and hyperactive? People with ADHD have less of this chemical neurotransmitter called GABA. And when GABA reaches another neuron, it tells it to stop firing. Now, if those other neurons are firing a signal that says go, you might want to use these stop signals to regulate how much everything is firing off. Now, if you don't have anything to stop or modulate all of these brain signals that are firing off, they're going to keep firing. It's like lighting a giant box of fireworks with everything going off in a bunch of different directions and you can't stop it. Now, what ADHD drugs might do is they help activate the neurons that release GABA or the stop signal so that it can stop some of the go cells from firing. It silences this extra firing and makes it easier to focus. I want to thank you all for watching and tune in for more mental health myth busting and other content coming out soon. You can check us out on Instagram, subscribe to us on YouTube, obviously. Check out our podcast, and we've put all the links in the description. Finally, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment and let us know what you want us to cover next.